The text arrived while I was elbow-deep in the guts of my ancient Mustang, trying to coax another year out of an engine that should have been scrapped during the Clinton administration. My phone buzzed against the concrete floor of my garage, and I almost ignored it. Almost. "You might want to see this." The message came from Maya Mercer, Theo's wife, my best friend's wife. The attachment took forever to load on my cracked screen, and when it finally did, I felt something cold settle in my chest. A red bra, Jenna's red bra. The expensive one she'd bought last month, claiming it was for special occasions. Lying on a hardwood floor I didn't recognize, next to a window with a view that made my stomach drop. I knew that skyline. 23rd floor of the Riverside Tower, Theo's condo, my wife's underwear, my best friend's bedroom, Maya's photograph. The math wasn't complicated, but my brain kept trying to solve it anyway, like maybe if I stared long enough, the numbers would add up to something different, something that didn't make me feel like the biggest fool in Edgewater. I set the phone down and wiped my hands on an old rag, taking my time. The Mustang's engine bay suddenly looked very appealing compared to the alternative of processing what I'd just seen. But the phone kept sitting there, the image burned into my retinas, and eventually I had to pick it up again. "When?" I typed back. "Today. 2 hours ago." 2 hours ago I'd been here in the garage. Jenna had said she was working late. Again. The third time this week. I'd offered to bring her dinner, and she'd said the office was ordering in. She'd been very specific about not wanting to be disturbed. "How long?" I sent. The response took longer this time. 3 months. Maybe 4. 3 months. I scrolled through my recent memory like flipping through a photo album. 3 months of late nights. 3 months of weekend emergencies at the law firm. 3 months of Jenna being distracted, distant, different. 3 months of me thinking it was work stress, middle-age restlessness, anything except the obvious. 3 months of having dinner with Theo and Maya every Friday night, watching basketball games together, planning our annual fishing trip. 3 months of Theo clapping me on the back and asking how things were going, all while he was apparently getting very familiar with my wife's lingerie collection. I walked to my workbench and opened the laptop I kept there for parts orders and repair manuals. It took me 15 minutes to access our phone records through the family account. Jenna's location history painted a very clear picture. 14 visits to Riverside Tower in the past 3 months, always during work hours, always on days when she'd mentioned staying late or meeting clients. The longest visit had been 4 hours, the shortest 90 minutes. I cross-referenced the dates with my own calendar. Every single visit had occurred on a day when I was either at work, at the gym, or visiting my mother. Someone had been paying attention to my schedule. The credit card statements were even more illuminating. Charges at the lingerie shop where she'd bought the red bra, a hotel room downtown on a Thursday afternoon last month when she'd claimed to be in depositions, lunch at expensive restaurants I'd never heard of, always for 2 people, always during the work week. And then there was the phone bill. A second line added to our account 6 months ago, a line I'd never seen a phone for. When I dug deeper into the records, I found text messages, hundreds of them, all to the same number, Theo's number. I closed the laptop and sat in the growing darkness of my garage, surrounded by the smell of motor oil and the distant sound of traffic on the interstate. Somewhere across town, my wife was probably still at Theo's place, maybe ordering takeout, maybe planning their next rendezvous, maybe laughing about how clueless her husband was. The smart thing would have been to confront them immediately. Storm over to Riverside Tower, bang on the door, demand explanations, make a scene, get it all out in the open. Instead, I picked up my phone and typed a message to Maya. "Thank you." "What are you going to do?" she replied almost immediately. I looked around my garage at the tools hanging on pegboards, at the Mustang with its hood up, like a patient on an operating table, at the beer fridge in the corner that had been my refuge for the past 5 years of marriage. This was my space, my sanctuary. The place where I came to think and work and pretend that the rest of the world made sense, but the rest of the world didn't make sense. My wife was having an affair with my best friend, and apparently everyone knew except me. I was the punchline to a joke I hadn't even heard yet. "Nothing," I typed back. "Not yet. Deck, I have more photos, and other things, if you want them." I stared at the message for a long time. Maya was offering me ammunition, evidence. The tools I'd need if I wanted to blow up their little arrangement in spectacular fashion. But taking those photos would mean crossing a line. It would mean admitting that my marriage was over and my friendship was a lie. It would mean accepting that I was going to have to do something about this situation. "Send them," I finally typed. The photos arrived in a steady stream over the next 20 minutes. Jenna and Theo at a restaurant I recognized from her credit card statement. Jenna leaving Theo's building, checking her reflection in the lobby mirror. Theo's hand on Jenna's back as they walked into a hotel. And then the documents. Screenshots of text messages, hotel receipts, even a copy of a lease agreement for a storage unit downtown, signed by both of them. A storage unit. They had a storage unit together. I couldn't even imagine what they were keeping there, and I wasn't sure I wanted to know. "Why?" I sent to Maya. "Because I'm tired of being made a fool of. And because you deserve better than this." "How long have you known?" "Longer than I should have. I kept hoping it would end on its own." I understood that feeling. Even now, staring at photographic evidence of my wife's betrayal, part of me was hoping this was all some elaborate misunderstanding. Maybe Jenna had a good explanation. Maybe the photos were taken out of context. Maybe I was jumping to conclusions. But the location data didn't lie. The credit card statements didn't lie. The burner phone bill didn't lie. My wife and my best friend had been lying to me for months, and I'd been too trusting, too comfortable, too stupid to see it. The garage door opened, and I heard Jenna's car in the driveway. I quickly closed all the photo attachments and shoved my phone in my pocket, then made a show of leaning over the Mustang's engine. "Hey!" she called out as she walked past the garage toward the house. "How's the car coming?" "Slow," I called back, not looking up. "Might need a new transmission." "That's expensive." "Yeah, might be time to cut my losses and get something newer." She paused in the doorway between the garage and the house. "That doesn't sound like you. You never give up on anything." I finally looked at her. She was still in her work clothes, a navy suit that probably cost more than my monthly salary. Her hair was slightly messed up, and her lipstick had been refreshed recently, but not quite perfectly. She looked like someone who'd been doing exactly what the photographs suggested she'd been doing. "Maybe it's time to start," I said. Something flickered across her face, too quick for me to interpret. Guilt? Fear? Relief? "I'm going to take a shower," she said. "Dinner in an hour?" "Sure, I'll clean up and meet you inside." She disappeared into the house, and I heard her heels clicking across the kitchen floor, then the sound of her footsteps on the stairs. A few minutes later, the shower started running. I pulled out my phone and scrolled through Maya's photos one more time. In the harsh fluorescent light of the garage, they looked even more damning. There was no ambiguity, no room for alternative explanations. My wife was having an affair with my best friend, and they'd been careless enough to get caught. The question was what I was going to do about it. I could confront them tonight, demand the truth, force the whole ugly situation into the open, file for divorce, split our assets, try to salvage some dignity from the wreckage. Or I could wait. I could take my time, gather more evidence, plan my response carefully. I could make sure that when this all came out, I wasn't the one left looking like a fool. The shower was still running upstairs. Jenna would be in there for at least 20 minutes, washing away the evidence of her afternoon activities. I had time to think. I walked to my workbench and opened the laptop again. If I was going to do this right, I needed to understand the full scope of what I was dealing with. I needed to know exactly how long this had been going on, how many people knew, and what my options were. The phone records went back 2 years. The burner line had been active for 8 months, not 6. The text message history was extensive, and reading through it made me feel sick. Not because of the explicit content, but because of how casual it all was. How routine. They had pet names for each other, they had inside jokes, they made plans weeks in advance, working around my schedule like I was an obstacle to be managed rather than a person whose life they were destroying. But the most damning evidence was in the metadata. The timestamps showed that some of their longest text conversations had happened while Jenna and I were having dinner together, while we were watching movies, while we were lying in bed. She'd been texting him while lying next to me. I closed the laptop and sat back in my chair, listening to the sound of water running through the pipes above my head. In a few minutes, Jenna would come downstairs, probably in her bathrobe, and ask what I wanted for dinner. We'd eat together and make small talk about our days, and she'd probably mention how stressful work had been lately. And I'd sit there knowing exactly how she'd actually spent her afternoon. The smart play was patience. I had the evidence I needed, but I could get more. I could document everything, build an airtight case, make sure that when this all came out, there was no room for them to spin the narrative in their favor. But patience had never been my strong suit. I picked up my phone and started typing a message to Maya. Theo's birthday party is next month. Still planning the big celebration? Unfortunately, yes. Why? Just curious. It's going to be quite a party. Deck, what are you thinking? I looked up at the ceiling, where I could still hear the shower running, and smiled for the first time in hours. I'm thinking it's time to stop being the fool in this situation. The next 6 weeks were the longest of my life, and also the most educational. It's amazing what you can learn about people when you start paying attention to the details they think don't matter. Take Jenna's morning routine, for instance. For 5 years of marriage, I'd watched her get ready for work without really seeing the pattern. But once I started looking, really looking, the tells were obvious. On Tuesdays and Thursdays, she took longer showers, used the expensive perfume instead of her usual scent, spent an extra 10 minutes on her makeup, chose outfits that showed just a little more skin than her typical courtroom attire. Tuesdays and Thursdays were also the days when her phone showed extended visits to Riverside Tower. She'd developed a tell, too. When she was planning to see Theo, she'd mention work stress at breakfast, complain about difficult clients or demanding partners, set up her alibi hours in advance, laying the groundwork for why she'd be home late and distracted. The Morrison case is heating up, she'd say, not meeting my eyes. Might be a long day. And I'd nod sympathetically and offer to handle dinner, never mentioning that Morrison Industries had settled their lawsuit 3 weeks earlier. I'd checked. The credit card statements painted an even clearer picture once I knew what to look for. Lunch charges always appeared in pairs on her affair days. The expensive lingerie shop had become a regular stop. She'd even bought a gym membership at a club near Theo's building, though I'd never seen her work out a day in her life. But the real revelation came when I started following the paper trail beyond just their affair. Theo's startup, Mercer Digital Solutions, had been hemorrhaging money for months. His flashy lifestyle was being funded by a combination of investor capital and what appeared to be some very creative accounting. More interesting, Jenna's law firm had been providing legal services to Mercer Digital at a significant discount. Services that, according to the public filings I could access, seemed designed more to help Theo shuffle money around than to address any legitimate legal needs. My wife wasn't just having an affair. She was potentially helping her lover commit fraud. I documented everything methodically, creating folders on my laptop with dates, times, and supporting evidence, screenshots of location data, photographs of credit card statements, copies of public records showing the financial relationship between Jenna's firm and Theo's company. Maya proved to be an invaluable ally in this process. Her own investigation had been going on longer than mine, and she had access to information I couldn't get on my own. Theo thinks he's being clever. she told me during one of our clandestine coffee meetings. But he's terrible at covering his tracks. I have bank statements showing cash withdrawals that correspond exactly with your wife's shopping trips. He's paying her? Not directly, but he's been giving her gifts, expensive ones, the kind that could be considered income if the IRS ever took a close look. Maya slid a manila envelope across the table. Inside were photographs of jewelry I'd seen Jenna wearing, along with receipts showing Theo had purchased them. A bracelet I'd complimented her on last month had cost more than I made in 2 weeks. There's more, Maya continued. Hotel receipts, restaurant bills, even a weekend trip to Chicago that she probably told you was a business conference. She was right. Jenna had spent 3 days in Chicago last month, supposedly attending a legal seminar. I'd even driven her to the airport and picked her up when she returned, full of stories about boring presentations and networking events. According to Maya's documentation, Theo had been on the same flights. "Why are you helping me?" I asked. Maya stirred her coffee slowly, considering the question. "Because I'm tired of being treated like I'm stupid. Theo thinks I don't notice his absences, his lies, his sudden interest in working late. He thinks I'm just going to sit at home and play the dutiful wife while he runs around with your Jenna." There was real anger in her voice, carefully controlled but unmistakable. "And because," she continued, "I want him to hurt the way he's hurt me. I want him to lose something that matters to him." Jenna? His reputation, his business, his comfortable life where he gets to have everything he wants without consequences. I understood that desire for consequences. For 6 weeks, I'd watched Jenna lie to my face every day, watched Theo text me about weekend plans while he was actively betraying me, watched them both act like I was too stupid to figure out what was happening. They weren't wrong, exactly. It had taken Maya's photographs to open my eyes. But now that I could see clearly, I wanted them to understand that their actions had repercussions. The question was how to deliver those repercussions in a way that would be satisfying without being self-destructive. "Theo's birthday party," I said. "Tell me about the guest list." Maya smiled, and for the first time since this whole mess started, I felt like I might be gaining the upper hand. 43 people confirmed, she said. All of our friends, most of his business associates, several potential investors. Oh, and your wife, of course. She wouldn't miss it. Of course not. It's going to be catered, open bar, live music in the backyard. Theo's been planning it for months. He wants it to be memorable. It will be. Maya leaned forward. What are you thinking, Deck? I pulled out my phone and scrolled through the photos she'd sent me over the past few weeks. Dozens of images documenting the affair in excruciating detail. Text message screenshots showing the casual intimacy that had developed between my wife and my best friend. Financial records proving that Theo had been essentially paying for Jenna's affections while she helped him manipulate his business finances. I'm thinking, I said, that it's time for some truth in advertising. That evening, I sat in my garage working on the Mustang while Jenna got ready for another late night at the office. She'd been particularly obvious about her preparations, spending an hour on her appearance for what she claimed would be a solitary evening reviewing case files. Don't wait up, she called out as she headed for her car. The Peterson brief is going to take forever. Drive safe, I called back, not looking up from the engine bay. The Peterson case had been resolved 2 months ago. As soon as her taillights disappeared down the street, I went inside and opened my laptop. I had work to do, and only a few hours to do it before she returned from her evening with Theo. The photos Maya had sent me were good, but they needed context. I spent the next 3 hours creating a presentation that told the complete story of Jenna and Theo's affair. Dates, locations, financial transactions, text message excerpts. Everything laid out in chronological order, building a narrative that would be impossible to deny or explain away. I kept the content clinical, factual. No emotional commentary, no angry accusations, just the evidence, presented clearly and comprehensively. The kind of documentation that would hold up in divorce court if it came to that. But divorce court wasn't my primary objective. I wanted something more immediate, more public. I wanted consequences that would be visible to everyone who had been unknowingly complicit in their deception. I wanted Theo's birthday party to be exactly as memorable as he'd hoped, just not in the way he was expecting. By the time Jenna came home at nearly midnight, smelling like Theo's cologne and full of complaints about how exhausting her evening of work had been, I had everything prepared. 43 copies of the complete documentation, formatted and printed, ready for distribution. "How's the car?" she asked, finding me still in the garage, ostensibly working on the Mustang. "Getting there," I said. "Might be ready for a road trip soon." "Where would you want to go?" I looked at her, standing in the doorway in her wrinkled work clothes, her hair messed up from whatever she'd been doing at Theo's place, and felt nothing but contempt. "Somewhere far from here," I said. "Somewhere I can start over." Something flickered in her expression. For a moment, I thought she might actually confess, might finally tell me the truth about what she'd been doing. Instead, she yawned and said, "I'm exhausted. See you in the morning." She disappeared into the house, leaving me alone with my preparations and my plans. In 3 days, Theo would turn 40, and everyone who mattered in their social circle would be there to celebrate. They were expecting a party. I was going to give them a reckoning. I spent the next 2 days refining my approach, making sure every detail was perfect. Maya provided updates on the party preparations, confirmed the guest list, even helped me plan the timing of my revelation. "The toast usually happens around 8, she told me. "After dinner, when everyone's had a few drinks and they're feeling social." "Perfect. Deck, are you sure about this? Once you do this, there's no taking it back." I thought about the question seriously. Once I stood up at that party and revealed what I knew, everything would change. My marriage would be over. My friendship with Theo would be destroyed. The comfortable life I'd built in Edgewater would become impossible to maintain. But that comfortable life was already built on lies. My marriage was already over, even if Jenna didn't know it yet. And my friendship with Theo had been a fiction for months. "I'm sure," I said. "It's time for everyone to see what's really been going on." The morning of Theo's birthday party, I woke up early and went for a long run along the river. The physical exertion helped clear my head and settle my nerves. By the time I returned home, I felt calm and focused. Jenna was still asleep, probably exhausted from another late night of work. I showered quietly and made coffee, then sat in my kitchen reviewing my notes one final time. Everything was ready. The documentation was complete, the copies were prepared, and Maya had confirmed that all the key players would be in attendance. Theo's business partners, his potential investors, most of our mutual friends. Everyone who needed to see the truth would be there. When Jenna finally came downstairs, she seemed nervous. "You're still planning to come tonight, right?" she asked. "Wouldn't miss it. Theo's been my best friend for 15 years. His 40th birthday is a big deal." She nodded, but I could see the tension in her shoulders. Maybe some part of her sensed that tonight was going to be different. "What time do you want to head over?" she asked. "I'll meet you there. I have some errands to run first." Another flicker of anxiety crossed her face. "What kind of errands?" "Just some things I need to take care of before the party." I finished my coffee and headed for the garage, leaving her standing in the kitchen with a worried expression. She had good reason to be worried, though she didn't know it yet. In a few hours, everyone would know exactly what kind of woman she really was. Theo's backyard looked like something out of a magazine. String lights hung between the oak trees, casting everything in a warm, golden glow. The catering staff moved efficiently between the guests, keeping glasses filled and appetizers circulating. A jazz quartet played softly near the pool, providing the perfect soundtrack for what was supposed to be an elegant celebration. I arrived fashionably late, carrying a gift bag and wearing my best suit. The one Jenna had bought me for her firm's Christmas party last year, back when I still believed we had a future worth dressing up for. Deck! Theo spotted me immediately and bounded over with the enthusiasm of someone who'd already had a few drinks. You made it! Happy birthday, buddy. I handed him the gift bag, which contained a bottle of expensive whiskey I'd picked up that afternoon. 40 looks good on you. Thanks, man. This is incredible, right? Maya really outdid herself. I looked around at the perfectly appointed party, the carefully curated guest list, the obvious expense that had gone into every detail. She certainly did. Must have cost a fortune. Worth every penny. You only turn 40 once. Theo clapped me on the back with the casual familiarity of someone who considered himself my closest friend, someone who had no idea that I knew he'd been sleeping with my wife for months. The performance was almost impressive. Where's Jenna? He asked, and I had to admire his acting ability. No tells, no guilty expressions, just the innocent question of a friend wondering about his buddy's wife. She'll be along. Had to finish up some work. Always working, that one. You're lucky to have someone so dedicated. Yeah, lucky. I excused myself and made my way through the crowd, greeting people I'd known for years, accepting their congratulations on Jenna's recent promotion at the firm, listening to their compliments about what a great couple we made. The irony was almost overwhelming. Maya found me near the bar, looking elegant in a black cocktail dress that probably cost more than my car payment. You clean up nice, she said, handing me a whiskey. Thanks. Everything looks perfect. Theo's very pleased with himself. He's been holding court by the pool, telling everyone about his latest business ventures. I glanced over at my best friend, who was indeed surrounded by a group of admirers, gesturing expansively as he described some new project. Several of the people listening were potential investors, I realized, people whose money he was actively soliciting while his company hemorrhaged cash. The documentation? Maya asked quietly. I patted the messenger bag slung across my shoulder. All ready. Second thoughts? None. Jenna arrived 20 minutes later, making an entrance that turned heads throughout the party. She'd chosen a red dress that hugged her curves and showed just enough skin to be interesting without being inappropriate. Her hair was perfect, her makeup flawless. She looked like exactly what she was, a successful, attractive woman in her prime. She also looked like someone who'd spent considerable time getting ready for a party where she knew her lover would be present. I watched her scan the crowd until she found Theo, watched the brief smile that crossed her face when their eyes met, watched the subtle nod he gave her in return. A private communication in a public space, invisible to everyone except someone who knew what to look for. Deck! She found me a few minutes later and kissed my cheek, a performance of marital affection for the benefit of the other guests. Sorry I'm late. Last-minute client emergency. No problem. You look beautiful. Thank you. She seemed genuinely pleased by the compliment, which made me wonder if Theo bothered with such niceties anymore. Have you seen the birthday boy? He's over by the pool telling war stories. I should go say hello. I watched her make her way through the crowd toward Theo, stopping to chat with mutual friends along the way, playing the role of the devoted family friend attending her husband's best friend's birthday party. When she reached Theo, their greeting was perfectly appropriate. A brief hug, a kiss on the cheek, birthday wishes delivered with exactly the right amount of warmth. If I hadn't known better, I would have seen nothing suspicious in their interaction, but I did know better. And as the evening progressed, I noticed all the small signs that revealed the truth beneath their performance. The way Jenna's eyes followed Theo when he moved through the party. The way he always seemed to position himself where she could see him. The brief moment when their hands brushed as they reached for drinks at the same time. They were being careful, but not careful enough. By 8 o'clock, the party was in full swing. The dinner had been excellent, the drinks were flowing freely, and the mood was celebratory. Theo had loosened his tie and rolled up his sleeves, playing the role of the successful entrepreneur surrounded by friends and admirers. It was time. I found Maya near the jazz quartet and gave her a subtle nod. She moved toward the makeshift stage area while I retrieved my messenger bag and began distributing manila envelopes to strategic locations around the party. One on each dinner table, several near the bar, a few by the pool where people were likely to notice them. Each envelope contained a complete copy of the documentation I'd assembled over the past 6 weeks. Photos, financial records, text message screenshots, location data. Everything presented in chronological order with dates, times, and locations clearly marked. The story of Jenna and Theo's affair told through irrefutable evidence. Maya stepped up to the microphone and tapped it gently to get everyone's attention. "Excuse me, everyone. If I could have your attention for just a moment." The conversations gradually died down as people turned toward the stage. "Thank you all so much for being here tonight to celebrate Theo's 40th birthday. It means so much to both of us to have all our friends here." Polite applause rippled through the crowd. Now, I know Theo was planning to say a few words later, but his oldest friend has asked if he could make a toast first. So please, everyone raise your glasses for Deck Ross. More applause as I made my way to the microphone, carrying my own drink and wearing what I hoped was an appropriately festive expression. I could see Jenna near the pool, looking slightly puzzled but not alarmed. Theo was grinning broadly, probably expecting some embarrassing story from our college days. "Thank you, Maya. And thank you all for being here tonight." I raised my glass and waited for the crowd to do the same. 43 people holding their drinks aloft, expecting a traditional birthday toast full of fond memories and good wishes. "I've known Theo Mercer for 15 years, I began, my voice carrying clearly through the backyard. "We met in college, became roommates, stood up at each other's weddings. He's been like a brother to me." Nods and smiles from the audience. Theo's grin grew even wider. Over the years, Theo has taught me many valuable lessons. He taught me about ambition, about taking risks, about going after what you want in life. I paused and took a sip of my whiskey, letting the anticipation build. But the most important lesson Theo taught me is this. Some people believe in sharing everything. And I mean everything. The first hint of unease began to ripple through the crowd. Jenna's smile faltered slightly. "So, tonight, I want to raise a toast to my best friend, Theo Mercer, the man who taught me that some people share everything, including wives." The silence that followed was absolute. 43 people frozen with their glasses raised, processing what they'd just heard. Theo's face went white. Jenna dropped her drink. "For those of you who might be wondering what I'm talking about," I continued, my voice perfectly calm, "I've taken the liberty of providing some documentation. You'll find envelopes placed around the party with photographs, financial records, and other evidence of the affair that's been going on between my wife and the birthday boy for the past several months." The silence shattered as people began looking around for the envelopes, finding them exactly where I'd placed them. I could hear the rustle of paper as the first few were opened. "Deck, what the hell are you doing?" Theo finally found his voice. "I'm giving you the memorable 40th birthday party you wanted, buddy. One that everyone here will remember for a very long time." Jenna had pushed through the crowd and was now standing directly in front of the stage, her face a mask of fury and panic. "You're drunk," she said loudly. "You don't know what you're saying." "Actually, I'm completely sober, and I know exactly what I'm saying." I pulled out my phone and held it up so everyone could see the screen. "This is a photograph of my wife's bra on Theo's bedroom floor taken 6 weeks ago. The person who sent it to me thought I should know what was happening while I was at home working on my car." Gasps and murmurs from the crowd as people began opening more envelopes and examining the contents. The documentation you're looking at includes location records showing that Jenna visited Theo's condo 14 times in 3 months, always during work hours. credit card statements showing expensive gifts and hotel rooms, text messages between the two of them planning their meetings around my schedule. Theo tried to step toward the microphone, but Maya blocked his path. I noticed she was smiling. There's also some interesting financial information in those envelopes, I continued. Details about how Jenna's law firm has been providing discounted legal services to Theo's company, and how Theo has been using investor money to pay for gifts for my wife. I'm sure the potential investors here tonight will find that particularly fascinating. The crowd was no longer silent. Conversations were breaking out as people examined the evidence, shared what they were seeing, began to understand the full scope of what had been happening. "Deck, please," Jenna said, her voice breaking. "Can we talk about this privately?" "We've had 6 weeks to talk about this privately. You chose to spend that time continuing your affair instead." I finished my whiskey and set the glass down on the podium. "So here's to Theo Mercer," I said, raising my empty glass. "May your 40th year be everything you deserve." I stepped down from the stage and began walking toward the exit, leaving behind the chaos I'd created. Behind me, I could hear Theo shouting my name, Jenna crying, and the buzz of 41 people trying to process what they'd just witnessed. Maya caught up with me near the front gate. "That was magnificent," she said. "Think it'll be enough?" "Look around, Deck. Half these people have their phones out. This is going to be all over social media within the hour. Theo's business reputation is finished, and your wife's career isn't going to survive this either." I looked back at the party, which had devolved into complete chaos. Groups of people huddled around the envelopes, examining the evidence. Theo in heated conversation with several men I recognized as his business partners. Jenna standing alone by the pool, mascara running down her cheeks. "No going back now," I said. "Would you want to go back?" I thought about the question as I walked to my car. 6 weeks ago, I'd been living a comfortable lie, believing in a marriage and a friendship that were both built on deception. Now I was alone, but I was also free from the pretense. "No," I said finally. "I wouldn't." As I drove away from Theo's house, I could see people streaming out of the backyard, many of them still clutching the manila envelopes. By tomorrow morning, everyone in Edgewater would know what Jenna and Theo had been doing. The consequences I'd wanted were finally coming due. My phone started buzzing before I'd even made it home. Text messages from friends who'd been at the party, missed calls from Jenna, even a message from my mother-in-law asking if what she'd heard was true. I turned the phone off and drove the rest of the way in silence, already planning my next moves. The divorce paperwork I'd prepared weeks ago was sitting in my desk drawer, ready to be filed. The apartment I'd quietly rented across town was furnished and waiting. I'd spent 6 weeks preparing for this moment, and now it was time to see how well my preparations would serve me. The underdog phase of my life was officially over. The fallout began before I even made it home from the party. My phone, which I'd foolishly turned back on during the drive, buzzed constantly with calls, texts, and social media notifications. By the time I pulled into my driveway, the story had already spread beyond the 43 people who'd witnessed my toast. Someone had live-streamed the entire thing. I sat in my car for a moment, scrolling through the notifications. The video had been shared dozens of times already, with comments ranging from supportive to shocked to gleefully entertained. Apparently, public relationship drama made for compelling social media content. The front door of my house opened, and Jenna appeared, still in her red dress, but looking considerably less put together than she had at the party. Her makeup was smeared, her hair disheveled, and she was holding her phone like a weapon. "Get inside," she said. "Now." I took my time getting out of the car, gathering my messenger bag and the empty envelope that had contained my documentation. The power dynamic between us had shifted fundamentally in the past hour, and I wanted her to feel it. "Quite a party," I said, as I walked past her into the house. She slammed the door behind me. "What the hell is wrong with you?" "Wrong with me?" I'm not the one who's been having an affair for months. You humiliated me in front of everyone we know. You humiliated yourself. I just made sure everyone could see it. She followed me into the living room, her heels clicking angrily on the hardwood floor. You've destroyed everything. My career, my reputation, our marriage. Our marriage was destroyed the first time you went to Theo's condo. I just made it official. I sat down in my favorite chair and looked at her. Really looked at her, for the first time in weeks without pretending I didn't know what she'd been doing. The woman standing in front of me was a stranger. Not because she'd changed, but because I was finally seeing her clearly. The documentation was very thorough, she said, her voice shifting from anger to something that might have been fear. How long have you known? 6 weeks. Maya sent me the first photo the day you bought that red bra. Jenna's face went pale. Maya knew? Maya's known longer than I have. Apparently, we've both been considered too stupid to notice what was happening right in front of us. My phone buzzed with another notification. The live stream video had been shared over 100 times now, with comments pouring in from people I hadn't spoken to in years. The story was taking on a life of its own. You need to fix this, Jenna said. Call people, tell them it was a mistake, that you were drunk, or having some kind of breakdown. Why would I do that? Because this affects both of us. My law firm is already getting calls. Theo's business partners are demanding explanations. You've created a disaster. I leaned back in my chair and studied her face. Even now, caught red-handed and publicly exposed, she was thinking about damage control rather than accountability. The disaster was created months ago when you decided to start having an affair with my best friend. Tonight was just the moment everyone else found out about it. She sat down on the couch across from me, her anger giving way to something that looked like desperation. Deck, please. I know I made mistakes, but we can work through this. We can go to counseling, figure out how to move forward. There is no moving forward, not for us. I pulled a manila envelope from my messenger bag and tossed it onto the coffee table between us. Divorce papers. I filed them this morning before the party. You'll be served officially on Monday. Her hand shook as she opened the envelope and scanned the documents. You're asking for everything. I'm asking for what I'm entitled to. The house, half the assets, and full documentation of your affair for the court record. You can't be serious. I've never been more serious about anything in my life. My phone rang, and I glanced at the screen. Theo's name appeared, along with a photo of the two of us from last year's fishing trip back when I'd still considered him a friend. Your boyfriend's calling, I said, holding up the phone so Jenna could see. Don't answer it. I swiped to accept the call and put it on speaker. Deck, thank God. Theo's voice filled the room, strained and panicked. We need to talk. This whole thing is a misunderstanding. Is it? Which part was the misunderstanding exactly? The part where you've been sleeping with my wife? Or the part where you've both been lying to me about it for months? Look, I know how this looks, but it's not what you think. It's exactly what I think. And now everyone else thinks the same thing, because I provided them with photographic evidence. Silence on the other end of the line. In the background, I could hear voices, probably Maya and some of the remaining party guests dealing with the aftermath of my revelation. You've ruined everything, Theo said finally. My business, my marriage, my reputation. Your business was already failing. Your marriage was already a lie. And your reputation was built on pretending to be someone you're not. I just made the truth visible. Deck, please, Jenna interrupted, leaning toward the phone. Theo, tell him this was all a mistake. Don't, I said, cutting her off. Don't make this worse by continuing to lie. I ended the call and turned off the phone, then looked at Jenna, who was still staring at the divorce papers. You have a choice, I said. You can sign those papers and we can handle this quietly, or you can fight it, and I'll make sure every detail of your affair becomes part of the public record. You're being vindictive. I'm being practical. You destroyed our marriage and betrayed our friendship. Now there are consequences." She set the papers down and looked at me with something that might have been genuine remorse. "I never meant for it to happen this way." "How did you mean for it to happen? Did you think I'd never find out, or did you just not care?" "I don't know. I wasn't thinking clearly." "You were thinking clearly enough to get a burner phone, clearly enough to coordinate your schedules, clearly enough to help Theo manipulate his business finances." Her face went white again. "What do you mean?" "The legal services your firm provided to Mercer Digital, the discounted rates, the creative accounting structures. You were helping him hide money from his investors while he used their funds to buy you gifts." "That's not... I was just doing my job." "Your job doesn't include helping your lover commit fraud." I stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the street where I'd lived for 5 years of marriage. It looked the same as it always had, but everything felt different now. "I'm leaving," I said. "Tonight. I've rented an apartment across town, and I'll be staying there until the divorce is finalized." "Deck, wait. The house is yours until we settle the property division. But I'd recommend finding somewhere else to stay for a while. The media attention is going to get worse before it gets better." As if to prove my point, a car pulled up outside and a man with a camera got out. Local news probably, following up on the viral video. "Jesus," Jenna whispered, watching through the window as the reporter approached our front door. "Fame is what you wanted, isn't it? The successful career, the high-profile affair, the dramatic lifestyle. Congratulations, you got it." The doorbell rang, followed by a knock and a voice calling out, "Mrs. Ross? Channel 7 News. We'd like to ask you a few questions about tonight's incident." I picked up my messenger bag and headed for the back door. "I'll send someone for my things next week. Don't contact me unless it's through lawyers." "Deck, please don't leave me to deal with this alone." I paused at the door and looked back at her. She was sitting on the couch in her expensive red dress, surrounded by divorce papers and the wreckage of the life she'd built on lies. "You weren't alone," I said. "You had Theo. Deal with the consequences together." I left through the back door and walked to where I'd parked my Mustang in the alley behind the house. The old car started on the first try, and I drove away from the life I'd known for 5 years without looking back. The apartment I'd rented was small but clean, furnished with basics I'd bought over the past few weeks in preparation for this moment. I'd even stocked the refrigerator and set up internet service. When you have 6 weeks to plan your exit strategy, you can be very thorough. I poured myself a whiskey and sat down to assess the situation. My phone, which I'd turned back on during the drive, showed dozens of missed calls and hundreds of text messages. The viral video had been shared over 1,000 times now, with local news outlets picking up the story. "Edgewater man exposes wife's affair at best friend's birthday party" was trending on social media. I scrolled through some of the comments, which ranged from supportive to critical to purely entertained. Public opinion seemed split between those who thought I was justified and those who thought I'd handled the situation poorly. I didn't particularly care what strangers on the internet thought, but I was curious about the reactions from people I actually knew. My boss at the IT firm had sent a brief message. "Saw the video. Take the week off if you need it. We'll talk Monday." My brother in California had called 3 times and sent a text. "Holy shit, Deck. Call me when you can." Emily from the boxing gym had sent a simple message. "Proud of you. Come in tomorrow if you want to hit something." But the most interesting message came from Maya. "Phase 1 complete. Ready for Phase 2? Phase 2. I hadn't really thought beyond the public revelation, but Maya was right. Exposing the affair was just the beginning. There were still consequences to be delivered, justice to be served. I poured another whiskey and started planning. By morning, the story had exploded beyond anything I'd anticipated. The video had been picked up by national news outlets, shared by celebrity gossip accounts, and turned into memes by people who found the whole situation hilarious. Savage husband destroys cheating wife at birthday party had become a viral sensation. My phone was completely unusable, flooded with calls from reporters, producers, and random people who'd somehow gotten my number. I turned it off and walked to the boxing gym, where Emily was waiting with coffee and a knowing smile. "You're famous," she said, handing me a cup. "Infamous, maybe." "Same thing these days. How do you feel?" I considered the question while I wrapped my hands for a workout. How did I feel? Relieved, certainly. Vindicated. But also strangely empty, like I'd been carrying a heavy weight for so long that I didn't know what to do with myself now that it was gone. "Free," I said finally. "For the first time in months, I feel free." "Good, that's healthy. Now let's see if you can channel some of that energy into your right hook." I spent 2 hours beating the hell out of various punching bags, working out the residual anger and frustration that had been building for weeks. By the time I finished, I felt centered and focused, ready for phase 2. Maya was waiting for me in the parking lot when I left the gym, leaning against her Mercedes and looking like she'd stepped out of a fashion magazine despite everything that had happened the night before. "Quite a performance last night," she said. "Just getting started." "Good, because Theo and Jenna aren't done yet. They're meeting with crisis management consultants this morning, trying to figure out how to spin this whole thing." "Let them spin. The evidence speaks for itself." "Evidence can be explained away if you have the right lawyers and enough money. But there are other approaches." She handed me a manila envelope, similar to the ones I'd distributed at the party, but thicker. "What's this?" "Everything I didn't include in last night's revelation. Bank records showing exactly how much investor money Theo spent on your wife. Communications between Jenna and her law partners about the questionable legal work they did for Mercer Digital. And some very interesting photographs from their weekend in Chicago." I flipped through the contents, impressed despite myself at the thoroughness of Maya's investigation. This is enough to destroy them both professionally. That's the idea, but I want to be strategic about how we use it. Maximum impact, minimum blowback on us. "What did you have in mind?" Maya smiled, and I realized that I'd seriously underestimated her capacity for revenge. "I'm thinking it's time to let some other people in on the fun." The beauty of a well-executed revenge plot is that once you set the wheels in motion, momentum takes care of the rest. Maya understood this principle better than I'd given her credit for. "The key," she explained as we sat in her car outside Theo's office building, "is to let other people do the heavy lifting. We've provided the evidence. Now we let the natural consequences unfold." Through the tinted windows, we watched a steady stream of people entering and leaving Mercer Digital Solutions. Employees, investors, what looked like lawyers or accountants. The aftermath of last night's revelation was clearly keeping everyone busy. "Theo's been in damage control mode since 6 this morning," Maya continued. 3 of his major investors have already pulled out. The rest are demanding a full audit of his finances. And when they audit his finances, they'll find exactly what we want them to find. Evidence of money being diverted for personal use, questionable legal expenses, and a pattern of financial decisions that coincide perfectly with his affair timeline. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. I'd gotten a new phone that morning, but somehow people were already finding the number. "Deck Ross, this is Jennifer Martinez from Channel 7 News. We'd love to interview you about last night's incident. Can we set up a time to talk?" I showed the message to Maya, who laughed. "You're in demand. Every news outlet in the region wants to hear your side of the story. I'm not interested in being a media circus. You might want to reconsider. Controlling the narrative is important, especially if Jenna and Theo are trying to spin this their way." She had a point. I'd seen enough of the social media commentary to know that public opinion was still forming. Some people saw me as a wronged husband who'd delivered justified comeuppance. Others viewed me as a vindictive man who'd handled a private matter inappropriately. What kind of spin could they possibly put on this? The evidence is pretty clear. They'll claim it was a momentary lapse in judgment, that they ended the affair weeks ago, that you're being vindictive and cruel. They'll paint themselves as the victims of your public humiliation campaign. Let them try. Anyone who saw the documentation knows better. The documentation from last night, yes. But we have more, remember? And there are strategic ways to release it that will maximize the impact. Maya pulled out her own phone and scrolled through what appeared to be a carefully organized contact list. I've been thinking about this all morning. We have evidence of financial impropriety that would interest Theo's investors. We have proof of professional misconduct that would concern Jenna's law firm. We have personal details that would fascinate the media. You want to leak it all? I want to be systematic about it. Each revelation builds on the last, creating a cascade effect that makes it impossible for them to get ahead of the story. I had to admire her strategic thinking. Where I'd been focused on the immediate satisfaction of public exposure, Maya was playing a longer game. What's the timeline? Today, the investors get the financial records. Tomorrow, Jenna's law partners receive documentation of her professional misconduct. By Wednesday, the media gets the personal details that will keep the story alive in the news cycle. And then? And then we watch their lives collapse in real time. There was something cold in her voice that made me wonder if I'd underestimated her capacity for ruthlessness. But then again, she'd been betrayed just as thoroughly as I had. She deserved her revenge too. My new phone rang, and I recognized the number as belonging to my lawyer. "Deck, we need to talk," he said without preamble. "Jenna's attorney called this morning. They want to negotiate." "Negotiate what?" "I filed for divorce and provided grounds. It's pretty straightforward. They're claiming the public nature of your revelation constitutes harassment. They want to file a restraining order and push for a settlement that's more favorable to Jenna." "Based on what grounds?" "Emotional distress, damage to her professional reputation, public humiliation. They're arguing that your actions went beyond simply exposing the affair." I looked at Maya, who was listening to my side of the conversation with obvious interest. "Can they make that stick?" "It's possible. The viral video complicates things, but the evidence of the affair is solid, and adultery is still grounds for divorce in this state. We can fight it." "Then let's fight it." "There's something else. Theo Mercer's attorney also called. They're threatening to sue you for defamation and intentional infliction of emotional distress." "For telling the truth?" "For the manner in which you told it. They're claiming the public nature of your revelation was designed to cause maximum damage to his business and personal relationships." "It was. Deck, I need you to be very careful about what you say and do going forward. If they can prove that your actions were motivated by revenge, rather than a legitimate desire to end your marriage, it could complicate things legally." I thanked him and ended the call, then filled Maya in on the conversation. "They're scared," she said immediately. "If they weren't, they wouldn't be threatening legal action. They'd be trying to quietly manage the situation. Or they're genuinely planning to fight back. Let them try. We have more ammunition than they know." She started the car and pulled away from Theo's office building. "Where are we going?" "To deliver the financial records to Theo's investors, in person. I want to see their faces when they realize exactly how their money was being spent." The offices of Riverside Capital Management occupied the top floor of one of Edgewater's few high-rise buildings. Maya had called ahead and arranged a meeting with the firm's managing partner, ostensibly to discuss concerns about their investment in Mercer Digital Solutions. "Mrs. Mercer," the receptionist greeted Maya with professional courtesy, "Mr. Patterson is waiting for you in the conference room." James Patterson was a man in his 60s with the kind of understated wealth that came from decades of successful investing. He greeted Maya politely but kept glancing at me with obvious curiosity. I understand you have concerns about our investment in your husband's company, he said once we were seated. I have evidence, Maya replied, placing a thick folder on the conference table. Evidence that Theo has been using investor funds for personal expenses. Patterson opened the folder and began examining the contents. His expression grew increasingly grim as he worked through the documentation. These bank records show significant cash withdrawals that correspond with personal purchases, Maya explained. Jewelry, expensive dinners, hotel rooms, all of it funded by money that was supposed to be used for business operations. And you believe these personal expenses were related to an extramarital affair? I don't believe it. I know it. Mr. Ross here is married to the woman Theo was having the affair with. Patterson looked at me with new interest. You're the man from the viral video. That's right. And you can verify that these expenses were related to your wife's relationship with Mr. Mercer? I pulled out my own folder, containing copies of the credit card statements and hotel receipts that matched the dates and amounts in Maya's financial records. Every dollar he spent on her is documented here. Patterson spent 20 minutes reviewing both sets of documents, occasionally asking questions or requesting clarification. When he finished, his expression was thunderous. This is fraud, he said simply. Theo Mercer used investor capital for personal expenses, then attempted to hide those expenses through creative accounting. We'll be pulling our investment immediately and considering legal action. There's more, Maya said. Documentation showing that Theo's company hired Jenna's law firm to create financial structures that would help hide these expenditures. She handed him another folder, this one containing the legal documents that showed the relationship between Mercer Digital and Jenna's firm. Professional misconduct, Patterson said after reviewing the new evidence. Both of them could face serious consequences. That's what we're hoping for. As we left the investment firm, I felt a sense of satisfaction that went beyond simple revenge. Theo and Jenna hadn't just betrayed their spouses, they'd engaged in professional misconduct that affected other people's money and livelihoods. One down, Maya said as we walked to her car. Tomorrow we visit Jenna's law firm. Think they'll be as receptive as Patterson was? Even more so. Law firms are very sensitive about anything that could damage their reputation or expose them to liability. That evening, I sat in my new apartment reviewing the events of the day. The viral video had continued to spread, generating thousands of comments and shares. Several news outlets had picked up the story, though most were focusing on the sensational aspects rather than the underlying issues of professional misconduct. My phone rang, and I was surprised to see my daughter Olivia's name on the screen. She was 16 and had been staying with friends since the party, avoiding the media attention that had descended on our house. Dad? Hey, sweetheart, how are you holding up? I'm okay. I saw the video. Everyone at school is talking about it. I'm sorry you had to find out this way. Are you and Mom really getting divorced? I closed my eyes, wishing I could shield her from all of this. Yes, we are. Because of what she did with Mr. Mercer? That's part of it. But the marriage had problems beyond the affair. I hate her, Olivia said, her voice breaking. I hate both of them. Don't hate your mother. She made mistakes, but she's still your mom. She lied to everyone. She lied to you. She lied to me. She lied to Mrs. Mercer. How can you not hate her? It was a fair question. How did I feel about Jenna now that everything was out in the open? I'm angry, I said finally. And disappointed. But hate takes too much energy. I'd rather focus on moving forward. Can I come stay with you? I don't want to be around her right now. Of course. I'll pick you up tomorrow. After ending the call, I poured myself a whiskey and stood at the window of my apartment, looking out at the city lights. Somewhere out there, Jenna was dealing with the consequences of her choices. Theo was trying to salvage his business and his marriage. Maya was planning the next phase of our campaign, and I was finally free of the lies that had defined my life for months. My phone buzzed with a text from Maya. Phase 2 launches tomorrow at 9 a.m. Jenna's law firm is expecting us. I raised my glass to the window, toasting the city and the life I was building from the wreckage of my marriage. No redemption, I said aloud, just consequences. Tomorrow would bring new revelations, new confrontations, new opportunities to ensure that Jenna and Theo faced the full weight of what they'd done. I was looking forward to it. The next morning brought news that accelerated our timeline considerably. I woke to find my phone buzzing with notifications about a new development in what the media had dubbed the birthday party revenge. Theo Mercer had been arrested. According to the news reports, the arrest was related to financial irregularities at his company. The investigation had apparently been triggered by complaints from investors who'd reviewed his financial records after our meeting with Patterson. Maya called me before I'd even finished reading the articles. "Did you see the news?" "Just reading it now. That was fast." Patterson works quickly when his money is involved. He filed a complaint with the district attorney's office yesterday afternoon. "What are the charges?" "Fraud, embezzlement, misuse of investor funds. Exactly what we expected." I felt a surge of satisfaction. This was bigger than personal revenge now. Theo was facing real legal consequences for his actions. "What about our meeting with Jenna's law firm?" "Still on. In fact, this makes our position even stronger. They'll want to distance themselves from both Theo and Jenna as quickly as possible." The law offices of Morrison, Bradley & Associates occupied an entire floor of a downtown office building. The firm specialized in corporate law and had a reputation for being both expensive and discreet. Maya and I were shown into a conference room where 3 partners were waiting: Sandra Morrison, the firm's founding partner, David Bradley, who handled most of the corporate clients, and Jennifer Walsh, who oversaw professional conduct issues. "Mrs. Mercer, Mr. Ross," Morrison began formally, "we understand you have concerns about work our firm performed for Mercer Digital Solutions." "We have evidence," Maya replied, placing her now familiar folder on the table. "Evidence that one of your associates, Jenna Ross, provided legal services that helped her lover hide financial misconduct from his investors." The 3 partners exchanged glances. They'd obviously discussed this meeting in advance and knew what they were likely to hear. "We're aware of the allegations surrounding Ms. Ross and Mr. Mercer," Bradley said carefully. "We've been conducting our own internal review." "Then you know that Jenna used her position at this firm to help Theo commit fraud," I said. "We know that there are questions about some of the legal structures that were created for Mercer Digital," Walsh replied. "But we need to be careful about drawing conclusions without a full investigation." Maya opened her folder and began laying out documents on the conference table. Bank records showing investor money being diverted for personal use. Legal documents created by your firm that facilitated those diversions. Communications between Jenna Ross and Theo Mercer discussing how to structure the arrangements to avoid detection. The partners spent considerable time reviewing the evidence, occasionally conferring in whispers. When they finished, Morrison's expression was grim. "This is very concerning," she said. "If these allegations are substantiated, Ms. Ross could face professional sanctions." "Could face?" I asked. "The evidence is right in front of you." "Mr. Ross, I understand your frustration, but we have procedures we need to follow. Ms. Ross will be suspended pending a full investigation. If the investigation confirms these allegations, she'll be terminated, and we'll report her to the State Bar Association." "What about the firm's liability?" Maya asked. "You provided legal services that facilitated fraud." "We'll be cooperating fully with any investigations," Bradley replied. "And we'll be reviewing all of our client relationships to ensure this kind of situation doesn't happen again." As we left the law firm, I felt another piece of the puzzle falling into place. Jenna's career was effectively over. Even if she avoided criminal charges, the professional sanctions would prevent her from practicing law. "2 for 2, Maya said as we walked to her car. "Theo's facing criminal charges, and Jenna's about to lose her career. What's next? Now we let the media finish the job. The personal details, the human interest angle. We make sure this story stays alive until there's nothing left of their reputations. But as we drove through downtown Edgewater, I found myself thinking about something other than revenge. My daughter's voice from the night before, asking how I could not hate her mother. The look on Jenna's face when she'd begged me not to leave her alone to deal with the consequences. "Maya," I said suddenly, "what happens after we destroy them completely?" She glanced at me with surprise. "What do you mean?" "I mean, what's the end game here? We've exposed the affair, destroyed their careers, ruined their reputations. At what point is it enough?" "It's enough when they've paid the full price for what they did to us." "And what price is that, exactly?" Maya pulled into a parking space and turned to face me. "They betrayed us, Deck. They made us look like fools while they carried on their affair. They used our trust, our friendship, our marriages as cover for their deception. I know all that, but nothing. They chose to do this. Every meeting, every lie, every moment they spent together was a choice they made. Now they get to live with the consequences." I understood her anger. I felt it too. But something about the systematic nature of our campaign was starting to feel excessive. "I keep thinking about Olivia," I said. "She's going to have to live with this for the rest of her life. Every time someone searches her mother's name online, this story is going to come up. That's not your fault. That's Jenna's fault. Is it? Or is it the fault of the man who decided to make a private matter into a public spectacle?" Maya's expression hardened. "Are you having second thoughts?" I considered the question. Was I having second thoughts? The affair had happened. The betrayal was real. Jenna and Theo deserved consequences for their actions, but did they deserve to have their lives completely destroyed? "I'm having complicated thoughts," I said finally. "Well, you'd better uncomplicate them quickly, because we're not done yet." She started the car and pulled back into traffic, heading toward the media district where several news outlets had their local offices. "One more phase," she said. "The personal details that will keep this story alive for weeks. The hotel receipts, the text messages, the weekend getaways. Everything that will make them unemployable and unmarriageable." I looked out the window at the familiar streets of Edgewater, thinking about the life I'd built here over the past decade. A life that was now permanently associated with viral revenge videos and public humiliation campaigns. "Maya, what if we stopped here?" "Stopped? We've made our point. Theo's facing criminal charges. Jenna's lost her career. Their affair is public knowledge. Maybe that's enough." "Enough for who? For them? They're still walking around, still breathing, still able to rebuild their lives somewhere else. And that's bad because?" She stared at me like I'd lost my mind. "Because they don't deserve to rebuild. They deserve to suffer the way they made us suffer." Did they make us suffer? Or did we suffer because we found out what they were doing? What's the difference? I thought about that question as we sat in traffic, surrounded by the ordinary life of a small city going about its daily business. People heading to work, running errands, living their lives without the drama that had consumed mine for the past several weeks. The light ahead stayed red longer than usual. A delivery truck idled beside us. A cyclist wove between cars. Someone laughed on a sidewalk cafe patio. None of them knew my name. None of them knew what it felt like to have your entire sense of order ripped apart and replaced with rage, planning, and sleepless nights. Watching them felt like looking through glass at a world I'd been locked out of. "The difference," I said slowly, choosing each word like it mattered more than it should, "is that suffering because of someone else's actions makes you a victim. Choosing to make someone else suffer makes you something else entirely." I heard my own voice and barely recognized it. Calm, measured, tired. Maya's grip on the steering wheel tightened. Her knuckles went white, jaw clenched just enough to show how much effort it took to stay composed. They made their choices. Now we're making ours. And what choice are we making exactly? The car lurched forward a few feet as traffic crawled ahead. We're choosing not to be victims. That answer should have satisfied me. Weeks ago, it would have. But as I looked at Maya's face, set with determination and cold anger, eyes focused not on the road, but on an invisible future she was already scripting, I felt something shift. But as I looked at Maya's face, set with determination and cold anger, I wondered if we weren't choosing to become something worse than victims. We were choosing to become the villains in someone else's story. The realization landed quietly, without drama, and that somehow made it heavier. Villains always think they're justified. Villains always think the end will excuse the means. I'd spent weeks convincing myself I was different. And for the first time since this whole thing started, I wasn't sure that was a choice I wanted to make. The media offices were busy with the usual afternoon rush of reporters and producers preparing for the evening news cycle. Vans were parked at odd angles. People with lanyards hurried across the lot. Phones pressed to their ears, stories already forming before facts were fully spoken. Maya had arranged meetings with 3 different outlets, each of which was eager to get exclusive details about the story that had captivated the region. This was the part she loved. The momentum, the leverage, the sense of inevitability. Once a story like this hit, it never really stopped. But as we sat in the parking lot outside the first building, engine running, I found myself unable to get out of the car. My hand stayed on the door handle. My body refused to move. "What's wrong?" Maya asked, finally turning to look at me. "I'm done." She blinked. Done with what? Done with all of this. The revenge, the systematic destruction, the media campaign. I'm done. The words surprised even me with how final they sounded. Maya stared at me in disbelief, like I'd just told her I was quitting in the middle of a marathon. "You can't be serious." "I'm completely serious. We've accomplished what we set out to do. Theo and Jenna are facing consequences for their actions. It's time to stop." Her expression hardened. "It's time to stop when I say it's time to stop." That line told me everything. "No, Maya, it's time to stop when I say it's time to stop, because I'm the one who has to live with the choices we make." I opened the door. Cool air rushed in, cutting through the tension in my chest. I stepped out of the car before she could say anything else and started walking toward my own vehicle, which was parked across the street. "Deck! Wait!" I turned back to face her. She looked furious, betrayed, genuinely unable to understand what she was hearing. "Thank you for everything you've done," I said honestly. "The evidence, the strategic thinking, all of it. But I'm not going to spend the rest of my life defined by someone else's betrayal. They'll get away with it." "They're not getting away with anything," I said. "Theo's facing criminal charges. Jenna's lost her career. Their affair is public knowledge. That's not getting away with it. That's facing consequences. It's not enough. It's enough for me." I walked away from Maya and her campaign of systematic revenge, leaving her sitting in her car outside the media building with folders full of evidence that I no longer wanted to see made public. As I drove home to my apartment, the city looked different. Not cleaner, not kinder, just quieter. I thought about the man I'd been 6 weeks ago, and the man I was becoming. The betrayed husband had every right to be angry, to seek justice, to demand consequences. But the man I wanted to be going forward wasn't defined by someone else's betrayal. He was defined by his own choices, his own actions, his own decision about what kind of person he wanted to be. I'd gotten my revenge. Theo and Jenna were facing the consequences of their actions. The truth was public, the lies were exposed, and justice was being served. That was enough. It had to be enough. Because the alternative was becoming someone I wouldn't be able to live with. And I'd spent too many months living with lies to start living with that kind of truth about myself. The underdog had won. The villain could rest. It was time to figure out who I was going to be next.